Within the Claims Association, there may be individuals who greatly object to the rules of the Claims Association. An objecting individual may lobby to get those rules changed, and succeed or fail to acquire whatever individualistic secessions he's lobbying for, whatever. This is apparently similar to the state, though it isn't for the reasons stated in the previous section. If he is unable to acquire secessions from the relevant agents of the Claims Association, and still tries to do whatever it is he wanted to do, that is, say he wants to start a pig farm and they're saying no, and a pig farm smells really bad. It's not like, ha ha, who farted bad, more like, I can't even think bad. If he tries to do this, he will face force from whoever is assigned to use force against those who shirk the decrees of the Claims Association. Thus, force is used at the margins in the Claims Association. One could call the folks assigned to violently enforce the rules of the Claims Association the Marginal Association, and the people who founded and convinced people to join the association as the Ideological Association. You may say I'm overanalyzing all this stuff, but I have a point to this. However, if an individual holds sufficient antipathy toward the rules of the Claims Association, he will most likely leave. Either he will just pack up his bags and go somewhere else, leave the geographic area of the association member's property, or he will trade land with someone on the geographic fringe of the association and secede from the association in that way. Fill in the technicalities as you will, and spare the world and your own mind of silly thoughts about donut scenarios or encirclement scenarios. One cannot leave or secede from the state as it stands. The way we know this is that the bulk of the population of the planet hasn't seceded from the various states, or at least a sizable portion has not. The state is maintained the same way the Claims Association is maintained, primarily through belief that the state/Claims Association is the best thing to do or is legitimate, and through force on the margins. The vast majority of people view the state as legitimate. Some may not like Bush, or they may not like Obama for whatever reason, and say, he's not my president, but they are not saying that the United States government, as an institution through time, is illegitimate. And supporters of the state need not be gung-ho patriotic flag worshippers or Constitution fetishizers, but can be resigned to the state as some inevitable law of nature, like death and taxes, or view it as a necessary evil, saying something trite like, yeah, I hate taxes as much as the next guy, but the roads have got to be built somehow. More detail is necessary for this, but for now let's just work from the point that the vast majority, say 98% of people in the area claimed by the United States federal government, believe the state is legitimate. So the vast majority supports the state and pays taxes, which enables the state to hire soldiers and police. I'm not saying that state police are completely worthless at all times. That is just an issue for another section, but police can be called upon to put the screws to tax resistors. If a person avoids paying taxes, he will get hit with a late penalty. If he refuses to pay the late penalty plus the taxes, he will then have a trial where the legitimacy of the state is assumed, and he will be sentenced to prison. If he resists being sent to prison, and that means defending his home with firearms against home invaders, he will be killed by the state police force, which is paid for by taxes. And the police force will claim to be that they were enforcing the law, and in the process of enforcing the law, they defended themselves from a tax evader, and put a bullet in the tax evader's head. That is the marginal state. That is how cracks in the ideological state are prevented from forming. Because if anyone was allowed to secede, you would then have cascading secession. A few trailblazers would step out into the boogeyman world of anarchy, and, well, it'd be fine. And then more would leave. And soon, only the most deranged cultists would cling to the state. And so to prevent this, the state cannot afford to let a single man secede, lest the others start getting any ideas. Now, they may let a few wackos go live up in the hills, but they won't be letting, for example, a town secede and say, we're going to opt out of the income tax and just pay our own way. They won't allow that. Killing tax resistors doesn't happen very often, because when most receive a fine, they pay it, and most humans have a revulsion against killing, and so any state agency that killed a tax resistor would not be very popular, and state agents themselves are humans, and humans have a revulsion to killing other humans themselves. And these agents of the state are not inhuman, they're just part of a corrupt institution. What's more is that repeated use of force destroys the ideology. It weakens the legitimacy of the state in the eyes of the citizens. States which repeatedly use force on their own citizens are very weak states, because it means that there is a large percentage of the people who are kept in line by force alone and don't believe in the official ideology. And I call this a high percentage marginal state. A man holding up a bank and holding up everyone inside the bank as hostage would be a 100% marginal state. The people in the bank are held up by force alone. They do not project legitimacy onto the enforcer, although over time they will slowly begin to project legitimacy onto this man in what is known as the Stockholm Syndrome. I apologize for the cliche metaphor I'm about to bring up, but this is similar to the sheep and the sheepdog. If a flock of sheep were all to rush against the sheepdog and the herder in a uniform attack, the sheepdog and the herder would be overwhelmed. A few sheep may die, and if this were the movie Babe, then those sheep would be remembered as martyrs of the revolution. Without belief in either the legitimacy or overwhelming force of the sheepdog, the sheep would go their own way. And even with the belief, a few sheep still stray. They still go off in their own areas, and the sheepdog and herder are needed to herd the sheep back into the flock on the margins, to prevent cascading secession of the entire flock. If you resist hard enough, the guns will eventually come out, and the true nature of the state will be revealed. Now, I haven't gone much into the utilitarian superiority of the stateless society, or even how various sundries would be managed, like roads, defense, safety and health regulations, police, law, the free rider problem in scientific research, humanitarian services, the monetary system, etc. But I just wanted to lay out the very basics, how ownership works, how associations work, and how the state works in a basic sense. Also, hopefully, if one really internalizes this basic, inescapable fact that the state is enforced at the margins by death, he will see that at the bottom of it all, the state is a death cult, and that one should not be so casual in advocating state action, even if he views it as a necessary evil. Because by doing so, you are advocating death threats. That is, you are arranging and pointing the guns in certain directions to achieve the desired results, even though most people are trained not to see the guns.